Welcome to arguably one of the funnest videos for me to film and hopefully a very entertaining video for you guys to be watching. Today we're doing my 2025 reading wrapped. I'm so excited to share these books with you because I didn't have the best reading year, I'm not gonna lie to you. It was definitely a good reading year at the start of the year, and then I think something just happened midway through the year and I went through the biggest reading slump that I've ever had in my life. And no matter what book I picked up, and I picked up many, I started about 15 different books and didn't finish a single one of them. I did have a sprinkle of books that I read throughout the end of the year, and some of them were actually my favorite books of the year. So we have a lot to get through today, so make sure you get yourself, as always, a fun little beverage and we can get started. I'm so excited. I've also decided, since getting out all of these books, I wish I could show you all the books I have around me. I've decided I'm gonna do a bookshelf decluttering, which very long overdue because the bookshelves are currently looking a little bit distressed. We need to freshen them up for the new year because I haven't even told you guys, but it is currently the 31st of December, 2025, and we obviously want to kickstart the new year feeling fresh, feeling revived. I feel like I've just gotten out of my reading slump, and I'm going to tell you about the book that got me out of it literally at the end of this video. So stay tuned. We've got a lot to get through, but it's going to be a fun time. Before we get into the books, I wanted to give you a little taste of the genres I've been reading, how many books I read. Yeah, just to give you an idea so that you guys can see if my reading tastes are similar to yours. So for 2025, I had a reading goal of 50 books. I read 28. And this is the thing. I was like really keen to get into reading at the start of this year. And I don't know what happened, but I just fell into a slump and I couldn't get myself out of it. And that's okay, that happens. I think you have to lean into it rather than try to resist the slump so that you can get out of it faster. I think that was my mistake. And I kept picking up books that everyone said were good, like TikTok books. And I think that was my second mistake. I think I kept picking up books that were potentially overhyped and I just couldn't get into them. I wasn't gripped by them, you know? My average rating was 4 stars. Most read genre was romance, 18 romance, 11 fantasy, 5 young adult, 3 literary fiction, and 2 thrillers. That makes sense. I really didn't read many literary fiction this year, but I will say it's one of my favorite genres, which surprises me that I only read 3. Top authors were Jessa Hastings, 4 reads. That makes sense. I read a lot of the Magnolia Parks universe this year. Alex Astor, 3 reads. Carissa Broadbent, 2 reads. And Carly Fortune, 2 reads. So look, not my best work, but I did read some really good books this year. So let's get into it without further ado. So in the month of January, I read 4 books. I started off so strong with one of my favorite authors, Carly Fortune, and her book, Meet Me at the Lake. I've read most of Carly Fortune's books. I will say, this book was not my favorite Carly Fortune book. I didn't hate it, but it definitely wasn't my favorite, and I think I just didn't gravitate towards the characters so much. This one involves Fern and Will, and Fern is essentially the daughter of a woman who owned a lakeside resort. I believe her mother passed away. I'm really trying to remember back into January this year. Her mother passed away and she inherited the resort. However, the resort is quite run down. There's a lot of work that needs to be done and it's not getting the traffic that it was getting previously. So she returns back to that lakeside resort where she grew up. She embarks on a journey to restore the resort. Crossed paths with Will, I believe, when she was a kid, and they kind of get back in touch and he is there to kind of help her with rebuilding this resort. And it was a really good story. It had a lot of heart to it. When I say it wasn't my favorite, it wasn't bad by any means. Like, she is such a great storyteller. If you haven't read anything by Carly Fortune, I definitely recommend starting with Every Summer After. If you're starting off with Carly Fortune, I definitely recommend reading Every Summer After to begin with. That was her first book, and it's the first book I read by her, and I think it just shows her storytelling so well. She just writes lakeside or beachside, small coastal town, small lakeside town romances so well, and they always have that then and now timeline. She just does them the best. She's just such a great writer. So if you love a romance that has a bit of heart, Emily Henry fans would love this author as well. I ended up rating this one 3 stars. So it was definitely above average for me, but it just wasn't my favorite in her catalogue of work. But I definitely recommend reading it because it's just perfect for a little summertime read. Then, not off to a great start, I read another fantasy book, and this one was one that I had very highly anticipated. It is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, and this book here I really wanted to give Fourth Wing vibes, and it's not that it didn't. I just think that it was a bit convoluted and it probably didn't need to be. It has a very complex magic system, world building lore system. So it has a massive map, which is very interesting and very different to anything else I've read. It has a glossary, it has a family tree, it has a list of all the creatures and beings. Because it's the start of a series, it just takes a little bit to get into, but it didn't hit for me the way I'd hoped a start of a series would. I gave this one 2.5 stars. Then I read my first non-fiction book of the year, and that was She's on the Money. This book here, it rewired my brain chemistry when it came to finances, and I don't typically like to read a lot of non-fiction. I typically set myself the challenge of 10 non-fiction a year, which I think, looking back to how I read this year, is probably a bit too high. This one here really breaks down finances, investing in stocks, and budgeting your money in a way that's really digestible. Really simple habits that you can implement right now. It's very simple and broken down and very actionable in terms of the steps that she gives you. So I definitely recommend it, especially if you are someone who is not very good with money, you are trying to be better, and you just need something to kind of inspire you. I think this is a really, really great read. I gave that 5 stars as well. I don't know if I should be rating non-fiction, but I did this year. So then I read the second book in the Magnolia Parks universe, Daisy Hates. If you were to ask me what I thought of Magnolia Parks last year, I would have said, oh, I'm probably not even going to continue the series because it's kind of boring and the characters aren't really likable and I don't really get the hype. My opinion has changed so much. Like, this is the biggest plot twist of the year for me. I loved this book. I gave this 5 stars. The way the Magnolia Parks universe works, if you are unfamiliar, and I don't know anyone who would be unfamiliar because it is such a popular series now, essentially the first book is from Magnolia's point of view. The second book is from Daisy Hates' point of view, and they kind of keep alternating as the series goes on. So the third book will be Magnolia, the fourth will be Daisy, the fifth will be Magnolia, the sixth will be Daisy, etc. The Daisy Hates books are just my pride and joy. I relate to her character so much. She's essentially someone who's quite academically smart, but just doesn't really have a solid group and kind of puts her foot in her mouth a little bit, and it's just like the drama of it all. It's definitely very comparable to Gossip Girl. I would say Gossip Girl meets London. That would be this series. This just kickstarted my Magnolia Parks obsession this year, and my Jessa Hastings obsession as well. She's just such a great writer. She writes in a way that's like very frivolous stuff they're talking about, but the way she writes it, just like, it makes you connect with these very unlikable characters in a way I've never seen before. They're unlikable, but they're also so human that you understand why they've done the things that they've done, even though you wouldn't agree or you wouldn't do those things yourself. So that one was definitely 5 stars. Amazing. Loved it. Then we get into Feb. Now, in Feb, I finally, and this book has been on my TBR for, I want to say, a year before I actually read this book. I think I had it. I think I got it for Christmas a year and a few months before I started reading it. And that is The Tomb, Iron Flame. I have a love-hate relationship with this series. This is the second book in the Empyrean series. It comes after Fourth Wing. I loved Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing just revamped the romantasy genre for me in a way that just like reminded me of Harry Potter. No other book's done that. And then we get to Iron Flame, and there were just so many choices in this book that it felt like there wasn't an editor. It felt like the plot just didn't really even have, like they didn't plan the plot. She just wrote it and hoped for the best and hoped it would all tie up in the end. And I was so disappointed because I love Fourth Wing so much. The ending really picked it up for me though. The ending got me really excited for Onyx Storm. There was a lot of hype going around at the moment. So at the time I rated it 4 stars. I don't know if I believe that now though. I really don't. I think I'd probably rate it 3 stars because it's not a bad book by any means. I just didn't really understand where it was going, and I didn't really feel like it needed like 620 pages for this book, and it's a big book too. So look, it is what it is. I finished it. I did not finish Onyx Storm, and I don't think I will, and that's just unfortunate. It really is. Then I read what was one of my most anticipated romance reads of the year by one of my favorite authors, and that's Abby Jimenez, Just for the Summer. I finally read it in Feb. I started by reading Yours Truly and Part of Your World, which were both almost 5 stars for me. I think they were 4.75 if I'm remembering correctly. I read them in 2024, and it reminded me of Carly Fortune's writing in that, kind of like a mixture between Emily Henry and Carly Fortune, in that it had the atmosphere of Carly Fortune, but the literary women's fiction side of Emily Henry. I didn't love this one as much. I think I ended up giving this one a 4. I did start reading Say You'll Remember Me as well, which is her most recent release. and I had such high expectations, but I just feel like it's going down in terms of being something that I want to read. I started reading it and there were lots of comparisons to Resend from Akata, and I just don't know what's happened, but suddenly I don't like reading her books anymore, and that makes me really sad. I think I will try it again and hopefully I will like it, but so far it's just not going well. So someone, like, if you guys have had the same experience, please let me know, like, what am I doing wrong? Because I did really like her, and now I read it and I'm like, this is just, I don't think I'm the target audience for these books anymore, which is really sad. Then I read another really fantastic fantasy book, and that is Two Twisted Crowns. This is the second book in the Shepherd King duology, the first one being One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. And this series is so unique. Has a great magic system. It's very much around these like magical cards that grant the person who has them the magical powers of that card, which is really interesting. There's the fog, and the fog being deadly to anyone who kind of goes too far into the fog. It's just interesting. It's a very atmospheric read, very gothic. You know how some fantasy books feel like the world is so big and there's so much to learn about all the different parts of this world, and there's like different sections of the world that you have to learn about, and they all have different traits. This series is not like that. She does fantasy in a way that just makes you feel like you're zooming in, like bird's eye view on this town, and you are seeing everything in the town so microscopically, like up close, and you feel like you're just like a part of it. So it's like very much puts you in the world rather than you having to like find out every little bit of detail about the world, if that makes sense. It was just a really great book, and I feel like it was a lovely experience to read a fantasy series where it was just 2 books rather than 10 books. It made it feel so much more achievable, and I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't picked up this series yet, definitely do. It's very fun. It's a fun time. I don't know if I said, but I rated this 4 stars. The last book I read in Feb was The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owens. This, I believe, is the first book from this author, as far as I'm aware, potentially. Wow. No. She's actually written like 20 books. Please ignore me. This is the first book in this series, however. The Crucible, the deadly contest the gods hold to determine a new ruler to sit on the throne of Olympus. So whoever's god wins gets to rule Olympus. This individual, the main character, gets paired with Hades, and it is a very interesting, a lovely little time with Hades. That's all I'm going to say there. It's a very good book. I really enjoyed it. It was very fun. I don't know if I will continue the series because I feel like I got everything I wanted out of the first book. I'm like, okay, is the second one just going to be a repetition of the first? I always get scared with second books. I feel like second book syndrome. It is a thing, it exists, and it's unfortunate that it's there. I did really enjoy this. I gave it 3 stars. I feel like it was good. It was interesting. It was different, but it didn't give me like 4 or 5 star feelings. Okay, and moving on to what was one of my most successful months yet. I think this was the downfall for me. I think I went way too hard in March, and then it just, I don't know what happened. You'll see. You'll see what happened. I started off by reading The Wedding People. I believe this was my book club book because I had a little book club that I did with my friends. I haven't done it in so long because I don't think any of us are reading as much, to be honest. But this is by Alison Aspatch, and it's essentially about a woman who a lot of terrible things have happened to, and she ends up booking a night or a couple of nights away in this hotel where she plans to unalive herself. A wedding party ends up arriving. She crosses paths with the bride, and the bride essentially tells her, you cannot do that because I'm getting married here and you cannot ruin my wedding. So if you're going to do it, you're going to have to wait till the wedding's over. They form a bit of an unlikely duo, and the story kind of goes on from there. You meet all of the guests that are at this hotel, because all of the other guests, aside from this main character at the hotel, are a part of the wedding party. There's just lots of interesting people, lots of dynamics, and it's a really great story. I ended up rating it 2.5 simply because I didn't feel like picking it up. And no matter how much I read it and I was enjoying it while I was reading it, I just didn't want to reach for it, and it made it a really long reading experience. And I think that bumped it down. I think if I were to have read it all in, a couple of days, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. Then I read A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett Sinclair, and this, I believe, is the start of a series around all different kinds of gods interacting with humans in the modern world. It's very smutty, it's very interesting, it's not super plot heavy, but it's a good time, and I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I didn't continue reading it. I think because I read 2 Greek god-esque books almost back to back. I kind of got that out of my system and wanted to move on to other things. So I didn't end up finishing the series, but I think I would go back and finish it because it was interesting. Then I read The Songbird and the Heart of Stone. This one here is by Carissa Broadbent, and it is the first book in one of her duologies in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. Essentially how she writes, it's never just like linear. She writes a duology around one, I guess, couple, you could say, and then she usually does like a novella or two, and then we'll do another duet within that same series around a different couple, and then another novella, I guess you could say. This one here was a very interesting story. It follows a character from our first book, Mish, and I was really excited to get her story because her background was kind of hinted about in the first duology in this series. And she seems so interesting, and she essentially honors a different god than the other vampires in this series does. I didn't even say it's a vampire series. It's about a few vampire kingdoms, the politics and the war and the romance and all of that kind of goes along with it. It's a very interesting series. I just kind of fell off the bandwagon in terms of reading the rest of them, but this one was very interesting. So it follows Mish and Azar, and Azar is from the House of Shadow. He's the prince of the House of Shadow. He is on a mission to go to the seven depths of hell, and I think he has to collect something at the bottom, and Mish kind of comes along for the ride because she's a prisoner at the House of Shadow. One thing leads to another, they form an unlikely duo, and things get really interesting. It was written really well. I loved the world building in this book as well. It wasn't like your typical fantasy world. It was literally going through the seven depths of hell. I think there's body, breath, psyche, secret, soul, and then the underworld is like the last little bit there. But it was just interesting, and it was written really well, and I enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.75, which is, I think, the highest rating apart from Daisy Hates out of all the books so far. Then I read The Lovely Lightlark by Alex Astor. It is the Lightlark series. This is the first book. It is a very complicated world. It's a young adult, I would say, or it's kind of like early adult. And there are a bunch of different colonies of people, and they all have different magical abilities. There's an island within this world called Lightlark, and essentially all of their power runs from this island, and the island hosts this competition every 100 years, and if someone wins, every colony or different group of people have a different curse and a different power, and if they win the Lightlark challenge or whatever the competition is, it removes their curse. So like some of them must eat human hearts to survive, and they kill anyone they fall in love with. Others, they lose the ability to fly. The sea becomes deadly every full moon. Like there's lots of different nuances, but it is very interesting, and there's a love triangle, and of course that makes things much more fun. It's a 3-part series, and I read this one and I gave it 4.25. I also read the second one, Nightbane. This one was really good as well. I did it in a bit of a reading challenge, and I gave this one 3.75. I think if I spent a little bit more time with the series, I would have enjoyed it a bit more, but it was a really interesting world. There's a third book that I really want to read called Skyshade, and I think I'm going to read that this year, because overall, I think for a young adult series, it was written really, really well, and the world was very interesting, which I feel like in a lot of young adult series, it can be a bit boring, if you will. But yeah, I very much enjoyed this. If you want something that's quick and easy to read, kind of comparable to Powerless, but with better world building and better writing, then you'll like this. Then I read Elsie Silver's most recent read. I'm pretty sure this is still the most recent read at this point in time, Wild Side. This is, I believe, the third book in the Rose Hill. Is it the Rose Hill? Yeah, the Rose Hill series. This book here was not my favorite. I feel like, have a drink every time I say that, because I did not have a great reading yet. It's fine, we're moving on. It wasn't my favorite. Most of Elsie Silver's books are 5 stars for me. This one I gave 4.25. It essentially follows our 2 main characters, and one of them just so happens to be a wrestling person, a wrestler, if you will, WrestleMania. He wears a mask, this one specifically. I just found it a bit boring. I really did. I was just like, not boring. Okay, boring is the wrong word. I think it was just a bit cringy, and I don't think I've ever thought twice about wrestling in my life. It's not the kind of book that made me think, oh, I should probably think a bit more about wrestling. Our pile is getting high, guys. Then I read a very good book, and I think I'm going to rate it higher than I've actually rated it. I rated it 4 stars, but I don't believe it is 4 stars. I feel like it should be 5 stars. And that is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. I'm going to read you the blurb because this is what sucked me into reading this book, and it was just so good. My name is Amber Reynolds. There are 3 things that you should know about me. Number 1, I'm in a coma. Number 2, my husband doesn't love me anymore. And number 3, sometimes I lie. Doesn't that just make you want to read it? It was just such a great book. Essentially, she wakes up in a hospital. She can't move. She has vague recollections of what's happened over the last couple of days, and you spend the book kind of going from her perspective. You go back in time, you jump back in time between now, when she was a child, and right before she got into the coma. And it just builds, and the suspense is so good, and you just kept guessing the entire time. And I feel like the plot twist, I feel like it wasn't predictable, and that's really hard in a thriller book. I feel like a lot of like the Frida McFaddens and things like that, you kind of guess once you've read a few of her books, you kind of guess the plot twist and how she writes. This I did not guess, and I just keep thinking about it. I almost want to reread it because it was so good. Then I read the second book in the Natural series, which is Killer Instinct. I really enjoyed this one as well. This whole series is very interesting. It's basically about a bunch of teenagers who, they're about 17, 18. Like they're older teenagers, not like teenagers. And they have special abilities, and it's kind of like not powers, but one of them is a human lie detector. One of them has a gift for profiling people. So they are really useful to the FBI, and the FBI essentially has created this department that allows these kids to use these abilities to help them solve cold cases, but they just so happen to end up solving uncold cases, like the cases that are fresh and alive and the police are working on right now. It is young adult, and sometimes it does feel a little young adult. I ended up giving this 3.25. It's a good series, it's quick, it's easy, and they're usually quite short as well, which is always nice. And then I read arguably my favorite book of the year. This book had me in tears, it had me feeling nostalgic, it had me just so swept up in the world, and it is none other than Sunrise on the Reaping. I would give this 6 stars, I would give it 7 stars, I would give it 8 stars. It is that good. If you are a Hunger Games fan and you haven't read this book, you need to pick it up right now because it will change your life. It is making me so excited for the movie to come out. There's so many tie-ins. If you don't know, this book kind of takes place, I guess you could say, halfway between the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the actual Hunger Games trilogy. And it has so many tie-ins to both sides. It just fits in so well. Oh, it just gets me in my heartstrings. It literally makes me want to cry right now. Obviously, this was 5 stars. I would rate it higher if I could. Then the last book that I read in March, and that was Butcher and Blackbird. This was another book club pick. I really enjoyed this. It's about 2 serial killers who essentially end up going after the same bad person. They are serial killers that only kill people who deserve being killed. So like bad people. That's what I'm going to wrap it up to. Bad people. And it's funny. They've got great banter and they build a connection from there, but they're both like such closed off people. It's a very different take on serial killers. So I thought that was very fun. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I did pick up the second book in this series. I believe there's 3. I started it. It was one of the ones that I started and didn't finish. And honestly, I think it's a me problem. I don't think it's the books. I think it was me. So my plan is to go back and pretend like I've never started all of these books that I have sitting there with bookmarks in chapter 2, and I'm gonna try to read them again like it's a fresh new book. That's my plan. Yay. Then we got to April. April was honestly also quite a good reading month. I started with Summer in the City by Alex Astor. This was her debut romance novel, and she did such a great job. Like, coming from a series like Light Lark that is very young adult fantasy to a adult romance novel is such a leap, and she just did it so well. It's essentially like a rom-com in a book. I would compare this to a lot of your favorite rom-com movies set on New York City with lots of peak New York City vibes. It's basically about a screenwriter, Elle, and she is really struggling to write her next script. And so she enlists this guy who just happens to be very attractive and loves New York City, and they go around together to all of these locations. Little does he know that they actually met, I think it was like a decade earlier, but he doesn't remember her. Even though they had a very pleasant evening together doing very pleasant things, he doesn't remember her. So that's kind of like the discourse throughout the book. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars, and I feel like that makes sense for this book. And I hope she writes more in this genre because I feel like she just does it so well. Like, it really made me happy. And then I read Carissa Broadbent's new series, Daughter of No Worlds. I'm pretty sure that's what the series is called, but it's also what the first book is called. It is the War of Lost Hearts series. That's what it's called. So essentially it's about our main character, Tisana, and she is a slave. She has nothing to her name. She has essentially been a slave for years and years and years, and has had to save every penny that she has to escape. And when she finally does escape, she has to find her friend, and her friend has been, I believe, taken away somewhere. So she has to join the Orders, and the Orders are essentially a, I guess, magical army. that obviously protects the kingdom or whatever it might be. Throughout that, she kind of learns that she's actually quite powerful, and it's her journey through learning that and having to kind of go to war with those powers in the orders to find her friend and save her friend. It was very good. It was very good. It was definitely, it's definitely a series that I want to continue. It's one of those things, I feel like when I read books on my Kindle, I forget about them. And I'm hoping that in the new year, I've got it on my list to read for the new year, and I'm hoping that that's a book that I pick up because I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, which I feel like is really good for a first book in a series. The last book I read in April is Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. This was a very good book. Essentially in this book, we're following obviously Magnolia being the 3rd book. She is coming home to London. She's been living in New York City and she is coming back, making her way back to London. And it's just, I feel like with all of these books in this universe, like I really just don't want to give too much away because I want you to enjoy and experience them for all that they are. They are dual POV, which I think in this series really works. I think you kind of need to hear Magnolia's side and then you need to hear that same experience from BJ's side just to kind of understand why they've made the decisions they have and the impact those decisions have had on the other person, even though that person does not realize what they're doing. And it's just the complexity of being human just put into a book. They're just so good. So obviously this was also 5 stars. I didn't read anything in May. Wow. So then we got to June and I picked up this one because in my head, the only book that I would actually finish would be a Magnolia Parks book, considering how much I've loved them so far. And every other book that I tried to pick up, I didn't finish. So this one here is the 2nd book in the Daisy Hates section of the universe. And lo and behold, I gave it 5 stars as well. Then in July, yes, we're up to July now. And you can see it's taken a turn for the worst. Then I read Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really, really love this book. I'd read most of her other books. The only book that I haven't read, Forever Interrupted and Carrie Soto is Back, which I do want to read. I was a bit hesitant on the tennis situation. I actually kind of like tennis now, so I feel like I'll enjoy it. But I absolutely love Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, Daisy Jones and the Six. I feel like she writes complex female characters really well, and they've usually got some trauma, they've got some history, and they're just incredible women that she writes about. And this one was no different. It essentially follows our main character who is enlisted in the astronaut program to go into space, and she's in I think it was one of the first women to go into space. It also has a bit of a side plot about another relationship that she has, and I really don't want to give too much away, but in true Taylor Jenkins Reid style, it just has the biggest plot twists, the biggest revelations. It just hits you right in the heartstrings, and they're just gripping stories. Like, she really knows how to tell a good story, and I love it. So I gave it 5 stars, which I was very happy about to have another 5-star. There really weren't many. Like, obviously these were 5 stars, but aside from Magnolia Parks, I think I only had 2 other 5 stars all year, which is criminal in my opinion. Then I read the last Magnolia Parks book. From my understanding, there's only going to be 3 of each, so we're waiting on the Daisy Hates final book, and that'll be my next read. But this was the last Magnolia Parks book. Oh my god, it was so sad. It was so sad. It made me cry so much. I just didn't want it to end, but it was just perfect. It was perfect. It was everything that I needed. I almost want to reread the series again in like a quicker succession because I just love them so much. If you haven't picked them up, or if you've only read the first Magnolia Parks book, I was the same. I didn't want to read on, and I'm so glad that I did because the series just grew exponentially for me, and now it's probably one of my favorite romance series of all time. So you should definitely read them. From July to October, I didn't read a single book. And I don't know what happened. I really don't. I think I tried again to start reading, and life was just busy. I just didn't feel like it. I very much got into my Gossip Girl era and started rewatching Gossip Girl. And I feel like when you've got a good TV show that you can just put on, it's really hard to then pick up a book because it's easier to sit down on the couch and watch a TV show than it is to sit and read a book. But we have 4 more books for the rest of the year. The next one that I read in October was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and this was a very, 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 very highly anticipated read for me. I think The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab it's my favorite book. It really is. It's my favorite book to date. I read it last year. I believe, and I do want to do a reread because it just talks about like why life is so important to be lived and why connection is so important as well and to be remembered, and why being remembered is a really important thing. And it's a great book, but that's not what this is about. This is about this book. This follows 3 women and it's a story about life, how it ends and how it starts again. And it is not really a love story. I would say it's a bit of a love story, but it's more of a life story, and they are my favorite books when there's love and romance intertwined in the story, but it's really more so about life. It has a sapphic vampire subplot, I would say, or most of the plot. The interconnected storylines were so interesting, and how she kind of put those 3 storylines together. The ending was very good. It was very good. It wasn't my favorite. I definitely still love Invisible Life of Addie LaRue more, but I don't think anything can top it because it's just such a good book. I still gave this one 4 stars. It's still a really great book. If you love V. Schwar's writing, if you love it being kind of like magical realism, it still feels real, but there's magical elements, then you'll definitely love this book. And my second book in October was the lovely Carly Fortune's One Golden Summer. I ate this book up. I loved it so much. Apart from Meet the Lake, Carly Fortune hasn't written a book that I haven't loved. She just makes you feel like you are in the head of the person who she's writing about. It's just the perfect summer read, no matter what the location is, who the couple is, what the storyline is. You just feel like you're there with her, like sunbaking on a deck near a lake with a boat. So this one in particular is following Alice. Alice is the photographer, and she's kind of at an impasse in her career, and she goes back to her, I guess, hometown, you could say, where her grandmother lives, to help her grandmother because her grandmother is going into get surgery and just needs someone there to help her recover. She runs into Charlie. Charlie is one of our characters from the first book, Every Summer After, which they are interconnected standalones. They're definitely standalones, but they do connect a little bit. So Charlie is the older brother of Sam from the first book. I'm just so happy that he got a little bit of love and, a storyline of his own, and you just learn so much more about how he's developed, because this is set quite a bit later than Every Summer After. So you just get to see what his life has been like and what his relationship with his family is like and who he has developed as a person into. And it's just such a great book. I rated this. See, I rated it 3.75, but I do feel like it's a 4-star. Like it is. It's a very good book. Then I read The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli, I think her name is. It's a duology. The Crimson Moth follows a female main character who happens to be a witch, and she is taking it upon herself to save all of the witches in this town that she's from. And she's doing it very secretly under the guise of being a socialite. And essentially what that means for her is that she has to go around parading like she is super materialistic and doesn't care about anything, so she can, in the dead of night, go out and save these witches. Crosses paths with a witch hunter who semi-suspects her for being a witch. He's trying to uncover her being a witch, also being under the guise of trying to court her in this socialite society. And so it's very interesting. It's a lot of like 2 people, saying one thing but meaning another, and I feel like it was very fun. Didn't get the depth from it that I'd hoped for, and I think it was one of those books that was a little bit overhyped, unfortunately for me. So yeah, I ended up giving it 3 stars. And I feel like 3 is fair. It's above average. It was fun. It was a good time, and I would recommend it if you're wanting a fun, quick read, but you're not going to get the depth of like V. Schwab in it, if that makes sense. Okay, drum roll. This is the final book that I read in 2025, and I think this got me out of a reading slump. I really do. I picked it up because it was on Kindle Unlimited. The blurb said that it was similar to One Day and Normal People, and I've seen the series of One Day and read Normal People, and they broke my little heart, and I think I just needed something that was going to hit my heart a little bit. So it's called Talking at Night, and you're following 2 individuals who have had terrible things happen to them throughout the course of their lives, and how they kind of connect and then separate and then connect and then separate. And it's kind of a bit of a right person, wrong time situation. It just like hit me in the heart a little bit. Like these characters they were likable, but they were not perfect. They were very imperfect characters, and they had a lot of stuff to work through on their own before they could kind of come together and be okay together, and there was a lot of grief. So trigger warning for grief, if that's not something you want to read about, probably don't pick this one up because there's a lot of grief in different forms. It was a beautiful read, and I feel like I want to see what other books this author has now so I can start reading the rest of them, because it was just, yeah, it got me out of my reading slump, and that's exactly what we wanted coming into 2026. Although I only read 28 books this year, I really want to up my reading game next year, because last year I read 49, this year I've read 28. I feel like I let myself slip at the end of the year, and I don't want that. Like, I want to be reading lots of interesting books and have lots to talk about with my books, because I just love reading. So yeah, that is the goal for 2026. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know if you've read any of these books and if you liked them or didn't like them, or if you think I should read on in the series, because I'm very undecided on a lot of these. So I think I need a little bit of a push. Yeah. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next year. Bye.